I coded and launched this coding challenge site and then shared it with my audience of over 500,000 programmers. And let me tell you, it took way more effort than I thought it would. So here's the story of how it happened. We're all aware of LeetCode. Well, the thing that I've never liked about LeetCode is that the problems always seem a bit pointless. It's just a bit boring. So I decided to build my own coding challenge platform and then give it to a bunch of programmers to see what they thought of it. Let me show you how I built it. Now, the first step to building any kind of programming project is writing down the features that you want to include. Okay, done. In all seriousness, here's a breakdown of the feature list that I wrote down for this project. Now, because this project has a visual interface element to it, I need to create some basic designs for what I want the main interface to look like. Trust me, designing an interface before you start building it will save you so much time. I usually use Figma to do this, and for this project, it took around 30 minutes. But if I was to experiment with the design using code when I was actually building the project, this would have probably taken a few hours. So you can already understand the time saving. So now, let me unveil to you the basic designs that I came up with. Okay, maybe it's not the Mona Lisa of UX designs, but I think it's still a pretty good start for what a coding challenge should look like. Time to get coding. I'm using a Pern stack for this project, which really doesn't sound that cool. It's comprised of a PostgreSQL database, Express.js, React.js, and Node.js. Oh, and I'm also using AWS S3 for some file storage. So, Perner. Let's make that a thing. After initializing my React project, installing Tailwind, and anything else that I needed, I got to work building out the user interface that I had just designed. Now, going into this project, there were two worries that I had. Number one, how am I going to get the code to run safely when we test it on the server? And number two, how am I going to make the code editor actually feel like a real code editor? We'll focus on the latter one for now. Well, it turns out that there are a bunch of NPM packages that you can use to add a code editor input box to your front-end projects. So adding in this code editor really wasn't that hard. Finishing off the rest of the interface design was pretty simple for this project. It just involved adding an accordion for the test cases for the challenge, an information section to explain the context of the challenge, and also this simple code submission and results modal. I also added in a start challenge page to make the user experience seem a little less intimidating. So now onto the back end. So because this is a coding challenge, we of course need to test the code that the user submits to see if it passes the test. We could do that on the front end, and in most cases that would work fine, but we would only be limited to testing JavaScript, HTML, and CSS code because these languages can run in the web browser. So there would be no option to add a Python challenge if I wanted to do that in the future. And two, the user could make changes to the web app's code on the front end to try and trick the app into thinking that their code is actually valid and completes the challenge. So if we were going to try and add in some kind of leaderboard functionality, they could effectively cheat. And we don't want that. So here's a solution that I've come up with. When a user starts their session, we're going to add a record to the PostgreSQL database, which contains the start time of the session. When they submit their code, we're going to first validate the request, create a submission record in the database that is attached to the session, and save the user's code to AWS S3 in case I need it later. Next, we're going to spin up a Docker container, which is going to contain the user's code and a JavaScript file that runs some predetermined tests on the user's code to see if they have actually completed the task. Once the tests have been run, we're going to pass the test results data that we receive from the Docker container. If all of the tests have succeeded, we can mark their submission as passed and then return the test results back to the user. But if it has failed, we need to mark the submission as failed and then we're still going to return the test results. That's a basic explanation of it. In reality, there were quite a few reusable functions that we needed to make the Docker container functionality work correctly, but I don't want to bore you with any of that. The third API endpoint that I built for this was to retrieve the challenge specification, which contained a simple database query, and return the information for the challenge. Oh, and another feature that I wanted to add, which I won't spend too much time talking about, is the certificate feature. So when a user completes the task and all of their tests pass, we want to give them a certificate that they can share on social media. To add this functionality, I've added some code to the submit code endpoint. If their code has passed, I've triggered this function to generate the certificate using the Canvas npm package. We're then going to store the file in AWS S3 and return a link that they can use to download the certificate. Once I had finished hooking up the API to the front end, I could deploy and test it. It works pretty well, but there's one issue that stops us from deploying it like this. Anyone can access this platform and potentially run code on my server. Even though it's secured in a Docker container, this still doesn't stop someone from making a bunch of API requests to run code and effectively spamming the system anonymously. So I came to terms with the fact that I need to implement authentication into this project. So instead of the users being able to instantly access the platform, they would now need to log on with an email and password before being able to have a go at the challenge. For authentication, we're going to be using Auth0. Now, I've been using Auth0 for my projects for a number of years now. In fact, here's a public-facing project that I built at the start of 2023, which uses Auth0. This is why I'm super happy to say that today's video is sponsored by Auth0, which makes it extremely easy to add authentication into your programming projects, and they've got an amazing free tier. Their free tier allows for you to have up to 25,000 monthly active users per project, which means that you won't have to start paying for it until your project explodes in popularity and you're already making some of that. It's also really easy to integrate third-party logins so that you can add login with Google, GitHub, and more to your app without that much effort. And of course, you can add custom domains so that your login page is branded with your website URL. All of the security is built in to help you protect your projects from any kind of automated attacks, all while providing a reliable method of authentication that you can use for any app. If you're interested, you can sign up to Auth0's free tier and start building apps with no upfront cost. Back to the video. Implementing authentication into this project is pretty simple. Once we've created a new tenant inside of Auth0, we can secure the front end using the Auth0 React npm package. By adding this custom protective root component that I've made, we can automatically redirect the users to the sign-up page if they try to access the challenge page without being signed in. On the back end, we can use the Express.js and the JWK-SRSA packages to authenticate the requests being received by the API. So only the API requests that contain a valid access token from the user will actually be accepted by the server. With all that set up and deployed to my production server, it was time to start letting people know about it. And what better place to do it than Instagram Live?
How can I practice JavaScript and problem solving? I say that the number one thing to practice is to build real projects, but if you're struggling to build real projects, there are quite a lot of platforms out there. I actually have been making one. If you go to challenge.tomshaw.dev.
Promoting it on my Instagram Live actually went really well. I managed to get a few people to try it out and I got some pretty decent feedback. So I implemented some of the changes, like adding this demo sequence to help onboard users. The next step of rolling this out was making a video to share it across all of my social channels, which I did a few days ago. So now I'm trying to decide what I should do with this project. I've got a few ideas, but I'd love to hear what you have to say as well. So let me know in the comments. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I really do appreciate you sticking around. This video has taken so long to make, so I really hope you enjoyed it.